Welcome, everyone. We are very excited this week to be with our friend, Shawn Stevenson. He's been on the podcast before. He's a best-selling author, creator of the Model Health Show, featured as the #1 health podcast on iTunes with millions of listener downloads each year. He's a graduate of the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Shawn studied business, biology, and kinesiology, and went on to be the founder of Advanced Integrative Health Alliance, a company that provides wellness services for individuals and organizations worldwide. He's been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Men's Health Magazine, which I used to write for, ESPN, Fox News, and many other media outlets. He has a brand new book, Eat Smarter, and I actually have the quote on the front cover. I'm so honored. Well-researched, easy to read, and will help you be smarter, healthier, and happier. So the title is Eat Smarter, Use the Power of Food to Reboot Your Metabolism, Upgrade Your Brain, and transform your life. Welcome, my friend.
Welcome,
to the Brain
Shawn.
Warriors Way podcast.
Thank you. It's always an honor to talk to you too. I appreciate it.
So why now? Why did you feel like this is the book the world needs? You know, COVID-19, they often call it COVID-19.
The COVID-19.
People gain 19 pounds that they've allowed themselves to eat bad food, telling themselves it's the only thing on the shelf. Actually, not true.
Or it's for comfort because they're more permissive.
Comfort because people need comfort
right
now. So talk to us about why now, Shawn, for this book.
You know what's so funny about writing a book? Sometimes it preempts some things that are coming. Like I had no idea any of this stuff would happen when I started writing this book. But it's such a timely message because one of the most overlooked things, and we've talked about this, is actually what we can do to get our citizens healthier and just get us to be more robust, healthier immune systems. You know, a lot of the conversation hasn't been on that piece, and we're going to continue to be susceptible. And so coming from the environments that I come from, you know, which is very diverse, very different environments, very safe, happy suburban environment, and also very volatile environment with a lot of violence and potential dangers. And I've seen in all the entire spectrum that everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to take care of their families, but also everybody's been inundated with unhealthy food. And especially in those other communities that's kind of riddled with violence, it's not just accessible, it's encouraged to eat terrible food.
Yes.
You know, so knowing these pieces and knowing that there are solutions, and also here's the big thing and why I wrote the book. And you know this as well. A lot of the data that's out there is just so immersed in complexity, unnecessary complexity, when the accessibility for these things, what we have to do is really make it fun. So many things about diet is about deprivation, restriction, and there's a natural human tendency to want to rebel. Even if we're like a rule follower, we don't like to be told that we can't do something, you know? So I would see this in my clinical practice, working as a nutritionist for, you know, as long as I have, that in order to get people want change, but we generally don't want to change that much.
Yeah.
So what are some simple things we can do? Some things that are clinically proven, but we don't have to turn our lives upside down. And also I think that the conversation about food needed to be expanded. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and just kind of the heart of why I wrote this book. Oftentimes in our culture, when we think about diet and nutrition, it's generally related to weight. And it's just kind of, they go together. But food is so much more than that. It literally makes up everything about us. As I'm looking at you guys, I'm seeing the food that you've eaten. And the same thing as you're seeing me, it's so weird and seemingly magical, you know, and talking about the brain, and you're such an inspiration for me. You know, the dendrites, the axon terminals, the gray matter, the white matter, everything about our brain is made from food. It's made of food. How important and powerful is this? And we get to choose what we're making our brains out of. And so that piece, and I wanted to share, of course, the metabolism side and all the foods that are clinically proven to help with that, but also how can we not just help to protect against dementia and Alzheimer's, but what are some nutrients that we've got some real clinical data that can improve your memory within a matter of weeks, potentially? And lastly, how does nutrition and food affect our ability to perspective take and have empathy and to connect with other people?
Yes.
That's such an important conversation that's not being talked about. And the data on this and how food affects even our proclivity towards violence and aggression. It's so powerful because right now there's a lot of infighting. There's a lot, people are just going on the internet just mad, like looking for a problem, let alone out here in the real world. So it's a very important message right now. It's very comprehensive, but also very actionable.
That's so interesting. So that's what I do at our clinics is nutrition and lifestyle component. That's what I've typically written about. So everything you're saying, I'm over here. Yes. I love what you said. I can see what you've eaten. So that is just such an important thing. Your skin is an outside reflection of the food you eat, of the health of your gut. Your brain is a reflection of sort of your overall health. Like they're connected. And so I love that you're approaching it from this way, because I wrote my first big food book 10 years ago. And there are so many people trying to broach that, or back then trying to broach it. And it seems like it's gotten worse, not better. So help me out with this. And we know that this is affecting society.
Yeah. It's just a fundamental flaw in the system, a system or and kind of mapping out any kind of model. It's only as good as the fundamental premise of the system itself. And our system of healthcare doesn't really respect or acknowledge the role that food plays, and knowing now at this point in working, I've been in this field for 19 years, but I know the top cardiologists, I know the top gastroenterologists, I know the top neuroscientists. And one of my friends, top incredible gastroenterologist, he was in school for 16 years, 16 years of education. He deals with the organs that are associated and work in the assimilation, digestion, and elimination of food. And yet he only learned about food for 2 weeks in 16 years. Yeah. And it wasn't in-depth, like real evidence-based stuff. It was more like if your patient has a very rare B6 deficiency, give this vitamin.
It was disease-oriented, not health-oriented.
Yes, exactly. And also, again, not understanding that these organs are made from food. There's nothing really more important than this. The other aspects are valuable, But so that is the number one premise and kind of why we're in this situation until there's a shift in the acknowledgement. And I mentioned this stuff as well, the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of our most prestigious journals. This was in 2018, came out and affirmed poor diet is the number one cause of our chronic diseases. Yeah. So this isn't like news anymore. We know that this is the case. When is the shift going to happen to focus on food? And so, but I believe that it is happening. There have been ripples, but we need some big waves and a big movement. And I'm grateful that this book, again, is coming out right at this time, which I had no idea that this would happen. And I haven't shared this with you guys. It became the number one new release in the United States the week that it came out.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. Like it was on the top 10 with like Matthew McConaughey and Barack Obama. Wow. But this isn't a book about celebrity or fanfare. It's about food and about health, and to see the response, like there's something just internally, like our spirits really know that this is important. So, yeah.
So what are some of the big ahas for you when you wrote the book? I mean, when we wrote The Brain Warrior's Way, I love this phrase that we came up with, is that it's critical to begin to avoid the weapons of mass destruction. Highly processed, pesticide sprayed, high glycemic, low fiber, food-like substances stored in plastic containers. And so, we have sort of a sense, lots of plants, healthy fat. But when you wrote the book, what were some of the big ahas? And we'll finish this first podcast with that. We only have a couple of minutes left. And then we'll go into some of the programmatic aspects of Eat Smarter.
Absolutely. So definitely the next segment, we got to talk about specific foods and metabolism, and this new term called epicaloric control. So we'll talk about that next. But one of the biggest aha moments, and this is why having you in my life and even having you on the cover is such an honor. But for me, one of the biggest aha moments, and you know this, like you might be in your office researching and you're just like, oh my goodness, how do people not know this? This is going to be a game changer. And so and I always ask this fundamental question, for example, with the brain, what is it made of? What is it made of? And one thing really rises to the top, and it's just not talked about enough, but there was a nuance there. So the brain is primarily made of water, right? It's 80% water, upwards of 80% water, the most water dominant organ in the body next to the lungs. But here's the catch. And by the way, so everything is very evidence-based. One of the studies that I broke down in the book was published in Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise. And they found that just a 2% drop in our body's baseline hydration level led to significant cognitive impairment, including a reduction in ability to have basic motor performance, right? Just moving your body in space, a reduction in executive function and things with coordination, and also like map recognition, mental math. Basically, we get dumber. Yeah. Just a 2% drop in our baseline hydration rate. And again, we're looking for these super nootropics and all these things to make our brain work better. We got to get this addressed. And here's the nuance. It's not just the water, because the brain itself, and I give this analogy of being like toll booths. There's a very specific diet that can actually enter the brain, right? We call this neuronutrition, and it's very specific, but water has express pathways. They got that like fast pass to get right into the brain. But here's the nuance, is the role that electrolytes play, right? And if you just listen to the word electrolyte, right? Our brains are running on this, electrical currency, and it helps with signal transduction. But specifically, I'm just drop these real quick for you guys. This was a double-blind placebo-controlled study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. They found that improving magnesium levels, one of our most powerful electrolytes, in adult test subjects who had noted cognitive decline, they were between the age of 50 and 70, was found to reverse their brain aging by upwards of 9 years.
Wow.
Just by getting their magnesium levels dialed in. All right. It's absolutely unbelievable. And so we talked about the various electrolytes and some of the science behind it. And, also, of course, there's sodium involved, potassium, the list goes on and on, but magnesium really jumped out at me. So it's not just the water. It's also the structure of the water, the minerals in the water, the minerals in our food when we eat water-rich food. So some of these things can be absolutely game changing. And then we go into what foods do we find these things in? How do we get our magnesium levels up efficiently? Because food first is a big premise of Eat Smarter.
Great.
That's awesome.
Eat Smarter. Use the power of food to reboot your metabolism, upgrade your brain, and transform your life. Out now. And I highly recommend it. Stay with us. What'd you learn? Write it down. Like magnesium is critical and can reverse your brain's aging. Take a picture of it, post it on any of your social media sites, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast, also Eat Smarter by Shawn Stevenson. We'll be back.
Welcome back. We are still here with our friend Shawn Stevenson, and we are talking about his new book, Eat Smarter. I just love I love that we're talking about concepts that are somewhat well known, but you dig a lot deeper, Shawn, and I love that. So you're really going into some of the newer science and some of the things, not just about food, but what makes our food work better. And I love what you said at the end of the last episode, food first. So let's talk a little bit about your program in this episode.
Absolutely. So in my nutritional science class at my conventional university, big auditorium class, and I was taught the very first day of class that calories are the king. If you can manage calories, you can manage your body composition. If you can manage calories, you can manage your health. And we were all being inundated with this idea, but I've seen this firsthand. Family members growing up, and also, of course, all the people that I've worked with over the years. Something is fundamentally flawed with this concept. And what we know today is that there are 7 what we call epicaloric controllers. There are 7 factors that are clinically proven to control what calories do in your body. Yeah. And I have an acronym for them. It's called in the DM, right? It goes down in the DM, all right? Direct messages. It's something the kids say, all right? Something the kids say. They're connecting in the DM. But I use that acronym very intentionally because our hormones, which play a major role in what our body composition is, our hormones are like little chemical messengers communicating to all the cells in the body, keeping things on the same page. But when that message, it's kind of like metabolic DMs, like a little metabolic text message or metabolic email. But what happens when one hormone becomes overabundant or overactive? We'll say insulin. As this email, it's going to start going to spam, right? And that's insulin resistance. And so with this acronym, we're dialing in, looking at the things, what are controlling what hormones do and calories do in the body. And I'll just share a couple of them with you guys really quickly. So and this is just piggybacking on being here on this particular podcast with these particular superstars, is how much our brain is literally controlling our body's absorption of calories. And researchers at Yale University School of Medicine really detailed how neuroinflammation, right? Neuroinflammation, specifically hypothalamic inflammation, is a huge disruptive force in our absorption of calories, or literally telling your body to turn down the absorption of calories because of the connection between, the gut-brain connection. And so what they discovered, and this is a huge issue today, is that neuroinflammation is a major causative factor in obesity. And as Dr. Amen knows, obesity is a major causative factor in neuroinflammation.
Yeah, that's a trip.
And none of these diet programs, some of them can accidentally help with this, but none of them are saying, hey, we need to get your brain healthy so you can lose weight, right? Which is really, again, your hypothalamus is an integration of your endocrine system and your nervous system, literally making your body do all the things that it does. And it's a master regulator of your metabolic rate. It's kind of like your internal thermostat. And again, it can communicate with your gut to literally tell your gut to increase the absorption of calories from the food you eat, or to turn down and suppress the absorption of calories. So this is very, very important. And the question is, okay, if my brain is inflamed, why don't I know? Right. And the brain is incredible in that it can tell you about pain anywhere else in your body except itself. There's no pain receptors in the brain. And so by the time you know your brain is really hurting, it could be too late. Chances are, if you're dealing with insulin resistance, if you're dealing with, trying to work on your body composition, battling with obesity or being overweight, chances are we do have some brain inflammation. I'm going to throw a quick solution that we know about in the data. And this is not an advocacy for any of these things. It's just the data exists. And so researchers at Auburn University found that oleocanthal-rich extra virgin olive oil can reduce neuroinflammation and even help to repair the blood-brain barrier that gets damaged through neuroinflammation, that creates that spiral out of control of more brain inflammation. And what the researchers found was 2 to 3 tablespoons a day of extra virgin olive oil. But there's nuance there. We go through all the details and what type of olive oil, where to get it, all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to throw that little nugget out there that it's really remarkable. And also, if you think about something being on fire, what puts fire out? Water. And we talked on the last episode about how important water is for cognitive function, but also helping to address neuroinflammation. So that's one of the epicaloric controllers in the body.
So list the other ones. I think this is really important. When you and I have talked about my book, The End of Mental Illness, inflammation is a major hallmark of, so your brain will talk to you in the sense, if you have brain fog, if you're depressed, if you don't have the focus and energy, that's one of the major things you should be listening to.
Yeah.
And I did a study at Amen Clinics on 50 consecutive patients. I looked at their omega-3 index. 49 of them had suboptimal levels. And that comes from our food.
And I love how you are taking complex topics, because I know how complex these are. This is what we do. But you're making them so digestible, pardon the pun, but you're making them so easy to understand. So this is really good. So you're making it.
And it's often been an area of conflict between Tana and I, because like you know, in medical school, they talked about calories really matter. And
well, it's not that they don't matter.
And
it's just that
they do, but the
quality matters more.
More.
This is such an important thing.
Are important.
But
yes, if you're eating 4,000 calories a day of grass-fed beef, you're still going to end up having too much. But if you're eating
the right foods, you're not going to want the 4,000 calories. And I think that's what he's getting at. So,
all right, we're going to solve this right now. Because this conflict. This beautiful conflict right now with this, what I'm about to share.
Let him share.
So this is the beautiful thing. So what I did, I went through, literally, I took people through the history of the calorie in the book, because I'm just wired up at this point to ask, whenever we have this conflict or this topic, I ask, where did it come from?
Right.
Where did the calorie come from?
And we weren't counting calories.
Right. Even very, these storied traditions that we look to, the ancient Greeks and Romans, the very physical culture, they weren't counting calories. They were just eating food, and when calories came along, this was in the domain of physics and engineering. Nobody was looking for a measurement of energy in food. But what it does, it completely negates the complexity of human digestion. And so let me solve this issue right here with this study. And this was published in Food and Nutrition Research. And this just blew my mind, because there's this saying, we say it's not just the calories, it's the quality of the calories, but truly what impact can it make? And what the researcher decided to do was, let's see what happens when test subjects eat a meal of processed foods versus a meal of whole foods. What impact does it have on their calories, on their calorie consumption and expenditure? So they gave them what they deemed to be whole food sandwich, which was whole grain bread and cheddar cheese. All right. And then they gave another group of test subjects a processed food sandwich, which is white bread and cheese product. And if anybody's asking, like, what the hell is cheese product? That's what Kraft is. All right. Kraft singles. They can't call it Kraft cheese legally because it's not a cheese and cheese. Whole nother story. But here's the bottom line. They're the same amount of calories. The two sandwiches are exact same amount of calories, same amount of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. They should be the same on paper and the impact it has on metabolism. But here's what happened. The folks who ate the processed food sandwich had a 50% reduction in calorie burn after eating that sandwich. It effectively created hormonal clogs that made their bodies more stingy in holding on to those calories that they consumed. Yes. It created massive disruption. Now, here's the thing. Most of us, I know that I ate processed foods every single meal of my life until the age of about 22, because I was just inundated with it. And just say I've got 30 family members, 28 of my family members are obese growing up. They didn't want to be obese. They're trying the diets, they're doing the points, they're doing Slim Fast, but it's the pure nature of the food being abnormal. It's not even food.
No.
It creates this disruption in what our hormones are doing. But again, last little point, these are epicaloric. It's controlling what calories do in our bodies.
Yes, thank you. Because it drives my family crazy. If I eat popcorn, which is quote unquote calorie smart, I literally will balloon up. But if I eat for me, the perfect diet is sort of a paleo version of keto, but with a lot of extra greens, like a lot of extra plants, but high fat, avocados, olive oil, but lots of fat. I mean, fat based. I eat double the calories and I shred. I just shred fat and my energy goes up and I feel amazing, but I'll eat way more calories. And so I try to explain to people, if you eat 800 calories of Oreos, you're initially going to lose weight. And then you're going to start gaining weight like crazy because of the inflammation. But people have such a hard time grasping that.
And I've seen this in my practice. Somebody's coming in, they're already on 1,000 calorie a day diet.
Yes, and they're
right?
gaining
They've
weight.
already, and they're feeling so defeated because, maybe their quote weight loss physician they're working with is just telling them they just need to stay in this calorie deficit. There's something wrong with what's controlling what calories are doing in your body. And so the last little piece,
satisfied with the other diet. More
exactly. This is a very, very big part of the conversation, because any diet that is making you feel restricted and deprived and depressed, how on earth could that possibly equal health? Like, those don't even have the same kind of frequency. But the last little piece of
all right. Well, we're going to continue this discussion on what to eat to rev up your metabolism. The book is Eat Smarter by Shawn Stevenson. It is doing great, and we want to encourage you to buy it for your friends, share it. Brain warriors.
My language.
The first thing brain warriors do is they fix their food. Because food, your body basically turns itself over. Every couple of months, your skin actually turns itself over, create new skin every 30 days. And it's basically from the food you eat. So what'd you learn? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites, #Brain Warriors Way podcast, also Eat Smarter. Shawn, how can people follow you? I know you have a great podcast that I love being on. How can they follow you?
Yes, where people are listening to this amazing podcast, they could find it's called The Model Health Show. The Model Health Show is crazy. I'm from Missouri. I'm from Middle America, but it's been the #1 health podcast in the United States many, many times. So I'm very grateful for that. So people can check out the podcast, and I'm on Instagram at Shawn Model, SHAWN Model. And I'm pretty active there doing some cool stuff too.
That's awesome.
Great. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are still here with our friend, Shawn Stevenson. We are having such a great conversation about his new book, Eat Smarter. And Shawn, I love this because you are just speaking my language. You are validating my points. This is my passion. It's what I love. Thank you. I do. I love being right. But anyways, but the reason I'm so passionate about this is because you, in the very first, before we even came on, you were talking about how, and we're going to do a live chat on this, about how much food affects society and anger and moods. And I was one of those kids. I grew up poor. I grew up with a lot of trauma. I grew up eating processed foods. This matters. This matters for getting people well, not just for losing weight. I mean, the first 3 letters in the word diet are die, but for getting people healthy. So you were in the middle of making a point. I want you to make that point, but then take us through more of your program and why this matters so much to you.
Absolutely. So this point, and also part of the program, it's highlighting something. This might be the most important thing in the universe of diet and food, is that we each have a very unique metabolic fingerprint. There's never been a person who has the same metabolism like you in the history of humanity.
Wow.
And nobody ever in the future will have a metabolism just like you. Wow. And here's the most important point. Even yourself next week doesn't have the same metabolism as you have right now. It is constantly changing and fluid and in flux. And this isn't accounted for. This is why a diet can work great for a year. Then all of a sudden, the weight starts coming back. Or, maybe I start to have some kind of a symptom of, maybe I'm having joint pain. Something happens, and we have to have the wherewithal and internal intelligence to adjust our diet framework to fit us. Because there are many wonderful diet frameworks, and I know the guys, but Eat Smarter is a unifier. You can take this diet framework, but do not allow it to imprison you. And so one of those other points in what is controlling what calories do in our bodies, for example, in our kind of digestive and metabolic uniqueness, is our digestive efficiency itself. Two people can be the same height and same weight, and one person can have a foot longer digestive tract, which in and of itself is going to give more time and availability for them to absorb more calories, right? That's not taken into consideration. Also, your bile production, your enzyme production, stomach acid production, all of these things that kind of help to modulate and determine how many calories you're actually absorbing from your food can be radically different in two people that are on the same diet, same exercise program, and wonder why. And so what we know in the data is that we can have these two folks do the same thing for an entire year, and one of them can burn upwards of 100,000 more calories in a year doing the exact same thing. And it's just not, it seems like it's just not fair. We've got to address the things that control what our metabolism is doing. So part of my program is adjusting and looking at the things that are controlling what calories do in the body. One of the big ones, and what a lot of folks are talking about today, is the health of the microbiome and your microbiome makeup. Your microbes are the front line determining whether or not your body's going to absorb calories, what it's going to do with the calories, and also the elimination of waste, of course. And so really quick snapshot study, and then I'll talk about how this relates with how we connect with other people. The journal Cell discovered, and researchers published this in journal Cell, but there's two parts. There's a specific bacteria they found in mice that literally blocked their intestines from absorbing as many calories from the food that they ate. Through the lens of allopathic medicine, we'll be like, well, we just need to bottle up that bacteria and sell it, so it stops people from absorbing as many calories from their food. But there's always residual side effects. Our bodies don't operate in a vacuum. That might affect our bacteria's ability to make B12 for us, or to produce short chain fatty acids to protect our gastrointestinal tract and reduce rates of autoimmunity. The list goes on and on. What we really need to look at is how are bacteria controlling whether or not we're absorbing calories? And research at the Weizmann Institute, and I would see this in my practice, I could have somebody send out for a stool sample. Basically, they poop into like a nacho basket. It's really weird. Send it out. And if I've never even seen the person before, and I could get their report back and look at their bacteria cascade, I can know with a high degree of certainty whether or not they're obese without ever seeing them. There's a specific makeup of our microbes associated with obesity, insulin resistance, and being overweight. And so these researchers took folks that had a cascade associated with obesity and implanted that into lean mice. And they took folks who had a lean microbiome makeup and implanted that into lean mice. Those mice stayed lean. The mice who received the implant of fecal matter from the folks with the bacteria associated with obesity, these mice became insulin resistant. Wow. They gained weight and gained body fat, not changing anything with the diet, just changing the microbes. So a big part of the program, it's unbelievable. A big part of the program is what are practical, simple things we can do to support and optimize our microbiome. And as Dr. Amen mentioned on an earlier episode, a big part of it is avoiding the things that's destroying our microbiome, especially pesticides, rodenticides, herbicides. Those things are designed to kill very small things, small organisms. Our microbes are those things. And most of them are neurogenic or estrogenic, so damaging the nervous system. And our bacteria, in school, I was taught, these are single-celled organisms. They don't have a nervous system. They can feel pain. They communicate with each other. Sounds very similar to a nervous system to me. And we
even
know
artificial sweeteners can damage our microbiome.
Where plastics can come in.
But there's so many things.
Plastics are hormone disruptors. The toxins you put on your skin in your cosmetic.
Right, but people trying to lose weight.
They're hormone disruptors that can also disrupt your microbiome.
But think about how unfair it is. All these weight loss products that use artificial sweeteners, that kills your microbiome.
Yeah.
That's not fair. So all these health foods.
So some of the do's and don'ts I have in my notes: don't stock up on water and plastic bottles because of BPAs, the toxin that can impact your body. Boil tap water. If you're concerned about the chemicals, don't buy white rice, pasta, cereal, bread, and flour tortillas because they're high glycemic. Don't fill up your shopping cart with cookies, cupcakes, and candies. My grandfather was a candy maker, and my dad owns owned before he died in of grocery stores. It's in my family. I grew up eating crap.
My grandmother was diabetic.
Yeah, no, I love the do's and don'ts. But what do you do to keep your microbiome healthy?
Besides just taking a probiotic. I mean,
Oh no. Even that idea, again, in my practice, I was getting pretty much everybody on a probiotic, but I was really missing the point, because probiotics, even if we have the very best probiotic in the world, it cannot colonize and really proliferate and take hold and do all the positive things in your gut if the probiotics don't have prebiotics, if they don't have the food source for them to colonize and do their job.
Right.
This is not talked about enough. So these are prebiotics for the probiotics, who then make postbiotics for you. All right. So all the beneficial things that these microbes can do. And so prebiotics, people can go to Google and look at a list of prebiotic foods, but it's very short-sighted. We know, okay, Jerusalem artichoke, asparagus, onions, garlic. Okay, that's great. But here's the truth. Every single food, every real food functions as a prebiotic for some type of beneficial flora. And it's going to be unique to you. You know, for example, your ancestors might have been eating a certain food for centuries. Maybe it's a certain type of bean. And all of a sudden, a diet doesn't allow for that food, and you strip that away. And the microbes associated that eat that food, now they don't have any food to eat, so they leave. It's kind of like an extinction or like an endangered species. And in order for you, and it might have been protecting you against weight gain, against autoimmunity, but not to, this is not an advocation to eat that food.
Think of immigration now.
Yeah.
Think of if your ancestors like ours
This has a huge
grew up
implication
in the Middle East, and now they moved, and now they have processed American food that puts them at higher risk for illness.
So if people were to come to you, I'm assuming by what you're saying, you somehow do a personal profile on them.
Yes, this is what I did. This is what I did in my practice.
And so do you have something in the book that helps people identify to some degree?
Continuously, I'm encouraging and creating this ability for folks to see, like, oh, that sounds like me, or this thing sounds like I need to avoid, just to have more self-inquiry, and to ask these questions. Because again, we all have a unique metabolic fingerprint. The last point is this with the prebiotic side. Every single food has prebiotic capacity, but here's a really powerful insight and takeaway for today. When you eat a food, you're eating that food's microbiome. So when you're eating a berry, you're eating that berry's microbiome and you're taking it on. When you eat an avocado, you're eating that avocado's microbiome, right? So it's just like when we talk about you are what you eat, literally these foods are becoming a part of us, but also are a part of our microbes, which gene for gene, we're 99% of our genes are from our microbes, right? Gene for gene. So this is very, very important and powerful. So number one, increase, and here's the big takeaway in the data. The number one thing that's been found to increase the diversity of your microbes. By the way, we found that as your diversity of microbes go down, your rate of obesity goes up. Your diversity of microbes goes down, your rate of heart disease goes up, your rate of insulin resistance goes up. The list goes on and on. We know that they're directly connected. The number one way to increase your diversity of microbes is to increase the diversity of foods that you eat.
And real foods, whole foods.
Yes. And even if we're eating healthy, we can all get caught in a rut of eating the same foods over and over again. So this is a big advocacy for us to just start to add in some different foods each week and experiment and have different things to feed our various microbes.
Wow. And you have a 30-day program in here to help people eat smarter, use the power of food to reboot your metabolism, upgrade your brain. I love that part. And transform your life. Stay with us. We're here with Shawn Stevenson. You can get Eat Smarter anywhere great books are sold. Welcome back, everyone. We are here with our friend Shawn Stevenson. We're just having a great time. I mean, we've talked a lot about food on the Brain Warrior Way podcast, but we're really bringing you some unique information with our friend, master teacher, Shawn Stevenson. His new book is Eat Smarter, Use the Power of Food to Reboot Your Metabolism, Upgrade Your Brain, and Transform Your Life. Tana just is like a little kid.
Yeah, I'm like on
so
fire.
Excited about talking to you. In this last podcast, though, let's really talk about what are the practical things people can do every day to fall in love. One of the things I often tell my patients is you're in a relationship with food. And I only want you to love food that loves you back. That both Tana and I have been in bad relationships in the past, and we're not doing that anymore. And we really protect our relationship. But it's that you have a relationship with food.
But to that end, you said something in the last episode, and actually in the last couple, that I want to just make sure that we touch on, and that because it's so important. You mentioned, people's personal, sort of their personal makeup. You also mentioned your genetic, sort of your, where you come from and how that affects you, how stress affects you. All these things are so important, and checking in with yourself.
Yeah.
And I find this so fascinating when we talk about creating a program, because I've often wondered, it's like so many people are just hell bent on telling you that their way of eating is the only way. And it's the way that it's got to be, whether you're a vegan or a caveman or whatever. But the truth is they don't all work for all of us, right? That one thing doesn't work for all of us. I was a vegan because I thought I needed to be for my health, but it didn't work for me. And that's not what works for me. So talk to us a little bit about this.
Thank you so much for saying that, because, and I think we have to go through that phase. In my clinical practice, while I was seeing folks every day, early on, we'll say 15 years ago, if I was into a certain diet, that's what you're eating, because I'm believing that this is the way, right? Like the Mandalorian. I don't know if anybody watches Mandalorian. This is the way. But the reality is we hit a level of incredible success for the people we are working with once we really focus on them and what they need right now, which inevitably will change as well, and giving them the tools to adapt and change as life goes on. And so for me, there are some overarching things that we'll just hit on these, some bullet points that every diet protocol needs to address. And so Eat Smart is really a unifier. There's so many wonderful diet frameworks. And the truth is, each and every one of these physicians or healthcare practitioners, nutritionists that are putting these books out, these are my friends. I know the guys, whether it's everything from, the vegan protocol to the keto protocol to the paleo protocol, Mediterranean, everything in between. I know the top people. And the reason they publish these books is they get results for their patients, but not all of them.
Right.
There's always a large group who's not getting the same results. And this is because we're not addressing, again, your unique metabolic fingerprint. So what are the things that are across the board essential in each of these frameworks? I'm going to throw a couple of things out here because they're very important and they're not talked about enough. So we did talk about this, I believe, in our first segment, but I want to emphasize this again. When I was in school, in the education I paid for, I was taught there are 3 macronutrients, fats, proteins, carbohydrates, but there's really 5, technically 6. You got one coming off the bench in fiber. But we got fats, proteins, carbohydrates, alcohol is a macronutrient, and water. Water is the most important of all the macronutrients, but it continuously is overlooked in trying to, finesse the different aspects of the diet. And the reason I'm bringing this up, and this is very powerful, is that there was one of these really interesting studies. They found that there's something called water-induced thermogenesis. And so what they did was have the test subjects to consume about 17 ounces of water within a couple of minutes. And then they tracked their rate of calorie burn. And they discovered that drinking that water caused them to burn 25 to 50 more calories within a certain time segment. And stretching that out a little bit, if we're doing that 4 or 5 times a day, we're literally burning hundreds more calories without taking in calories and without getting out and running on a treadmill. And the question is this: How is it happening? Because is it like the cold water, the body's heating it up, it's thermogenesis? No, it's none of that. It doesn't matter the temperature of the water. What matters is water makes everything work better,
Right,
because it's required for everything to do its job.
That's so cool.
And why is alcohol a macronutrient? Talk about that.
Oh, this is so good. This is crazy. All right. So alcohol, and this is not an advocacy for alcohol. This is not, but your body can use it to do processes. All right. And so, in school we were taught there's you got 9 calories per gram of fat. You've got 4 per gram of carbs, 4 per gram of protein. There's 7 per gram of alcohol. And now here's the rub. Alcohol, your body cannot store alcohol though. Unlike the other things. If alcohol comes in, and I'm not saying that this is a good thing, it might be an alarm process. Your body immediately uses it. It does something called fat sparing. Yeah. It will literally stop the burning or the oxidation of fat and literally stop burning everything else and use that alcohol immediately. It is like a top priority. And so it can use alcohol as fuel to do processes, but it's not a very clean burning fuel, if you want to put it like that. And I know you said this before.
You just said something really important. It will stop burning fat. Your body will stop burning fat when you drink alcohol.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. And again, there's a lot of nuance here. And this is not to say that people can't find some benefit in red wine or whatever the case might be. But this is just a lot of folks don't know how this stuff works. And I wanted to demystify it and also wonder why, okay, if I go too far into this realm, which you guys know, especially in the data during this quarantine, all these shutdowns, the consumption of alcohol is skyrocketed, which has gone right along with the quarantine 15 or the COVID-19 pounds gained, and part of that process. Yeah, I'm sorry.
The American Society came out last year and said we probably shouldn't drink because any alcohol is associated with 7 different kinds of cancer. And
that's a big statement.
Our biggest blog last year is titled, "I Told You So." And when Tana and I first dated, she told me, "I'll never tell you."
He keeps saying this. I don't remember saying that. She doesn't remember. Because it's my favorite thing to say.
But I remember it. And she completely lied about it. And
I don't remember that.
But, I've been saying that for 30 years and I have no dog in the fight. I just, have 170,000 brain scans, and alcohol prematurely ages the brain. So if magnesium can decrease the aging of your brain, alcohol and marijuana both increase the aging of your brain. But that's really interesting. We only have 3 minutes left. If you had to go, these are 3 top tips from Eat Smarter. And I just recommend to everybody Eat Smarter.
Yeah, I haven't heard one thing. I mean, everything I've heard has just got me excited. So, yeah.
Awesome. So number 1 is to really dial in and focus on our number 1 macronutrient, which is making sure your hydration needs are met. We go through all the nuance in the book. So that's number 1. I advocate for folks to wake up and take what I call an inner bath. All right. So many of us take an outer bath, outer shower for the rest of the world, but the inside is more important. All right. Beauty is from the inside out. So I wake up every day for the past 15 years and I drink about 20 to sometimes 30 ounces of water. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to increase the diversity of foods that you're eating, which increases the diversity of your beneficial bacteria, which we talked a little bit about earlier. So that's number 2. And in that, let me give another little nugget. Specifically increasing the diversity of our green leafy vegetables. What was found, Rush University Medical Center found that folks who ate 2 servings of green leafy vegetables had brains that were 11 years younger compared to folks who were eating less than 1 serving a day. All right. Incredible.
That's like nothing.
That's it, right? 2 servings. And it's one of the big reasons, and we talked about this in the first segment, it's a great source of magnesium, anything that's green. All right, so that's number 2. And number 3, and again, you're such a pioneer in this and the importance of this. Every single person needs to be adamant about getting enough DHA and EPA in their diet. It is so important. One of the most mind-blowing studies that I shared in the book The researchers used MRIs and actually looked at the brain. They found that the folks who had the lowest intake of DHA had the highest rate of brain shrinkage. All right. And it was just under 1.2 teaspoons a day led to accelerated brain shrinkage. And this is not the shrinkage is like it's cold outside if you're a guy. It's just like it's kind of cold. And this is like can permanently mess you up type of shrinkage. And DHA, because it literally makes up the structure of, they're called structural fats. And you got express pathways into the brain for DHA, for signal transduction, for plasticity of your brain cells. You have to get your DHA. Food first. Last little part here, as we go out, the Journal of Neurology found that folks who ate just one meal of seafood per week did in fact perform significantly better on cognitive skills tests. So we got fatty fish.
I'm actually friends with the author of that study. They actually had more gray matter in their brain. Eat smarter, Shawn Stevenson. Shawn, we
awesome.
Love you.
That was a great conversation.
We're grateful for you. We look forward to having you back and sharing you with the Brain Warriors Way audience. So you can get that book anywhere great books are sold. What did you learn? Write it down, take a picture of it, post it on any of your social media sites. Brain Warriors, first thing they do, get their food right.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.